Good afternoon or good evening, everybody, and welcome to Beehive Productions Horror Hump Days. We're on night 3, I guess. What we're doing tonight. Tonight, I'm going to be reading you a story from my book, Nyctophobia, which looks a little something like this. This is this would be my second horror anthology that I wrote. It's got on the cover is so the story behind the cover here is my boss, my old boss, my original boss from the company I currently work at. Um, he was working late at night, and the door to the basement is right next to the door to the men's bathroom. And it was a new building, so nobody was used to where everything was. And it was dark out, and it was dark in the office. He just had the light on in his office, and he fell down the steps and broke his collarbone and cracked a rib. And he didn't have his phone on him, so he had to crawl next door to the insurance office and got help from there. So, anyway, that's the story behind that picture. He was not very happy to see see this as the cover of the book, but it was pretty funny to me. So there you go. Uh, so I yeah. So tonight's story is about UFOs and how I came about the story. It's kind of based on a true event. My daughter and I, about a long time ago, on her birthday, it was around her birthday, it was April 30th, and I took her to fly a kite. She had never flown a kite before. And so we went out and we were flying, got her kite way up in the air. It was actually just perfect. And I wanted to get a picture of her flying the kite. So I took one from behind her on the ground looking up. And when I was doing that, there was like 6 objects going from south to north. And they were in a V formation. And at first I thought they were geese. And then I thought, oh, those are too big to be geese. And then as they got... So then I thought, yes, a Ben Franklin kind of thing. Good evening, Kevin. So then as they got closer, I go, well, they're not geese, they must be airplanes. And then when they were above us, I noticed they were spheres. They were round spheres, huge ones. And they went all the way across. And I was trying to ask my daughter, Kate, I said, do you see that? And she goes, what? The clouds? And I said, no, look right there. And I showed her. And she goes, what the heck is that? And then right when she said that, they broke out of formation and they swirled around in the sky, and then they all darted into a cloud bank. And it freaked my ass out. And I did a lot of research on what that was, and we were supposed to take a trip to California that year, and I didn't want to go because I didn't want to fly. I didn't want to be up in the air with those things, and it made me question pretty much everything. So, hey, good evening, Shannon. How are you? Yeah. So anyhow, I did another weird thing about that is I called an organization. Well, first I did call 911 and asked them if they had gotten any reports. They did not. I talked to my friends on the newspaper. They did not hear anything about it. They wanted to know if I wanted to do a story in the paper on it, and I said no. I don't want people thinking I'm insane. So what do? I write a book about it, right? Anyhow, So I contacted this group called MUFON, which is Minnesota UFO um, Watchers or something like that. I contacted them, and the guy wanted to come interview me, and he said, "Can I interview your daughter too?" And I said, "No, I'm not really comfortable with that, and I don't know if she is either, because she was kind of shook up by it as well." And so he made an appointment to come out and see me, and then he said he was somebody in his family was sick, and he couldn't make it. So then we postponed it to another date, and then found out it was his daughter that was sick, and she died. And then and I was like, "Oh God, I'm sorry." And then a couple months later, I recontacted him and made an appointment for him to come out and talk to me about it. And then he died. So I was like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna shut up about it." And a few years later, I wrote a book about it, or I wrote a story on it. And that's what this was. That's what this story is about. That's where this story comes from. Is all of those instances that happened. I did a little research that I'm going to bring up and kind of read to you. Came from thehill.com, which is a online newspaper. And this one was on the U.S. military has been observing metallic orbs making extraordinary maneuvers. At a historic NASA briefing on UFOs, in government parlance, a key Defense Department official made a striking disclosure. Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, director of a new UAP analysis office, stated that U.S. military personnel are observing metallic orbs all over the world. An image along with two brief videos of such objects are now publicly available. According to Kirkpatrick, spherical objects account for the largest proportion, nearly half, of all UAP reports received by his office. Critically, some of these objects are capable of very interesting apparent maneuvers. To be sure, rigorous scientific analysis may ultimately identify a prosaic explanation for such observations. In the meantime, however, such metallic orbs are prima facie evidence of extraordinary technology. After all, how would spheres lacking wings or apparent forms of propulsion execute maneuvers of any kind? In his presentation, Kirkpatrick also described the UAP characteristics most frequently received by his office. This range of attributes, in short, amounts to a UAP profile that Kirkpatrick's staff is out hunting for. Intriguingly, this profile includes small 3 to 13 feet in diameter spherical objects capable of flight at a range of velocities from stationary to twice the speed of sound, despite a perplexing absence of thermal exhaust, such as heat from an engine. Of particular note, Kirkpatrick made clear some of these highly anomalous characteristics are observed via multiple sensors. Former U.S. Navy fighter pilot Lieutenant Ryan Graves has described daily encounters with unidentified objects exhibiting characteristics strikingly similar to those described by Kirkpatrick while training off the U.S. East Coast in 2014 and 15. Graves and at least 50 to 60 fellow naval aviators observed unknown objects, frequently via multiple sensors, that remained stationary over the ground, even in hurricane-force winds, or traveled at speeds faster than sound. Although the aircrew rarely observed the objects visually, a harrowing near mid-air collision marked the first time a naval aviator in Graves' squadron had observed one of the objects at close range. According to the pilot, the object appeared as a dark-colored cube inside of a clear sphere. As if to confirm, Kirkpatrick noted that the NASA event that translucent spheres are among the most commonly reported UAP characteristics. So, there you have it. There is observations out there through NASA and through Naval Air Command on stuff like that. So I'm not totally off of my rocker, right? So yeah, it is pretty wicked, huh? So So, without further ado, as I always say, let's get into the story called Lights in the Sky. do, do, do. Wind is best harvested in late April on the southern plains of Minnesota. It's when the windsurfers hit the lakes in their wetsuits after being cooped up for the 5 months of winter weather. It's when the wind turbines are at their peak electricity production. It's also one of the best times to fly a kite. The day was overcast, the sky a transparent blue layered with light puffy clouds. The wind blew at 35 miles per hour from the south, a welcome warm breeze from the former frigid air. Out on the Fair Lake soccer fields, two lone figures stand. One, short in stature, is an 8-year-old girl. The other is a 38-year-old male who is obviously her father. Together, they are attempting to tame the wind with a kite he had purchased earlier that day. The young girl, giddy with anticipation to pilot the kite, is grabbing with little hands to hold the string. The man places the roll of high-gauge white string in her welcoming hands while he backs up with the kite. Already, the wind wants it, rippling the wings and fluttering the three-striped plastic tail. When he reaches a distance of about 50 feet from his daughter, he stops. "Are you ready, honey?" he shouts. "Yeah," her heart thumping in her chest. "Let it go, let it go." "Hold tight." "I will, Daddy. Let it go." He let it go, and like a rocket it zipped into the air with ferocious speed. His daughter squealed with delight. That melted his heart. "Keep the string tight," he instructed as he ran up to her. "I will, Daddy. Gosh!" She frowned at him, causing him to laugh. To his surprise, she took to it like a natural. The kite zipped and dived until she had the string tight enough. It just steadily raised itself into the sky. "Perfect, Lisa," he says. "Good job." She stood silently with a perma-smile on her lips. "Gonna need braces for that one," he thinks to himself. "Better start saving now." "Can I make it go higher, Daddy?" she asks innocently. "Sure," he agrees. "Just keep that string tight." "Quit saying that." He will remember how blue her eyes are, like a perfect reflection of the sky. He'll remember that crooked tooth smile with that little gap in between the front two teeth. He will never forget, no matter how many whiskeys he drinks, the next few moments either. He knelt behind her, trying to get an artsy shot with his flip phone. He looked off into the sky to the south. There were geese and planes and insects zipping their way across the sky. But something else caught his eye. There were 6 objects flying in a V formation from the south heading north. At first, he thought they were geese, as that was their normal flight pattern. But as they got closer, he noticed they were too large to be geese. He next deduced that they were probably aircraft. There was an Air Force base in nearby Sioux City, Iowa. "Hey, Bobby, welcome." But they didn't make a sound, and as they flew overhead, he thought they were spherical in shape. He tried to register this and couldn't take his eyes off of them. "I'm not seeing this right," he thought to himself. "What the hell kind of aircraft is spherical?" The objects were hundreds of feet beyond the kite now, rapidly making their way north. "Honey," he asked Lisa, "do you see that?" "What, Daddy?" she asked, not taking her eye off the kite. "Those shapes up there in the sky, just right above your kite." "What shapes? Those clouds?" "Look, just above them." He was trying to aim her gaze with his finger. Just as she caught sight of them, they disengaged from their flight pattern and zipped in impossible angles from each other, as if they were dancing in the sky. "What the?" Lisa said, letting go of her kite. With that, they all dove into a cloud. "You saw it?" he asked frantically. "Daddy, my kite!" She went running for the undulating roll of string. But you saw it, didn't you? I don't know. It was weird. Oh my God, Lisa. I think we just saw a group of UFOs. Daddy, my kite is flying away. He looked at the cloud those objects had dove into, and then ran after the kite. Lisa screamed in support of his chase. He was getting winded and cursed ever starting up smoking. He leapt at the roll of kite string that had got caught on a lump of grass and had hold of it. The chaos of the kite's flight pattern made the kite string rub against his face, giving him a burn. God damn it, he cursed beneath his breath. He pulled it tight and began to wind the kite up. He was backing his way back to Lisa. There you go, honey, he said, still staring up at the sky, watching for more of those things. Honey, here, take the kite. He looked down and noticed his daughter wasn't there. Lisa? He looked behind him. She wasn't there. He spun in every direction, but she wasn't anywhere to be seen. The entire soccer fields were empty. It was just him. He ran to his Toyota, but she wasn't there either. Lisa! He shouted, but was only answered by the wind. He ran to the little brick building that housed the concessions and bathrooms. The doors were locked tight, but he still pounded on them, shouting her name. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911. 911 emergency. State the nature of your call, please. I need to... He didn't know how to word it. I need to report a missing child. Can I get your name, sir, and a description of the child missing? My name? My name is Daniel Sutter. I'm the girl's father. Her name is Lisa Ann Sutter. She's 8 years old, brunette, with blue eyes. Are you calling from a mobile phone, sir? Yes, I'm at the soccer fields. We are sending an officer to your location. Can you please stay on the line and answer a few more questions, please? I can't. I have to find her. I understand that, sir, but the more information we have, the better we can... Dan hung up the phone and started to weep. He didn't know what he was going to tell his wife. Do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound? Margaret screamed into his face. Do you? Dan bowed his head. His eyes stung from crying for the last hour. I know how it sounds, he defended. You think I don't know how crazy it sounds? Jesus, I was right there. Lisa was right there. Detective Bueller wrote in his notebook. You're sure there was no one else on the soccer fields with you? Bueller asked. I mean, it's a big complex. You didn't see any other vehicles parked there besides your own? No, Dan answered. I'm sure of it. Bueller looked at Margaret. We have officers and volunteers canvassing the neighborhood since we released the Amber Alert for Lisa. Thank you, she began to sob again. You didn't get any reports about, Dan didn't know how to word it, about things in the sky? Shut up about that, goddammit! Margaret punched him in the arm. Our daughter is missing and you're worried about aliens? I think they're the ones that took her, he said reluctantly. Margaret began to pummel him until Detective Bueller stepped in and pulled her arm off of him. You're not going to find your daughter this way, Mrs. Sutter, he said calmly. Bueller sat Margaret down on a chair away from the couch they were sitting on, and then looked at Dan. In answer to your question, Mr. Sutter, no. We've spoke with the Air Force Base, the local airport, and with the FAA. There have been no anomalies reported today. I don't understand. How... Dan was speaking more to himself than anyone else. You need to go and search for our daughter, Daniel, Margaret spat. You're sitting there on the couch babbling like a madman about science fiction while some maniac has our child. Dan stood up to go out, but Bueller stopped him. Actually, Margaret, Detective Bueller interrupted, I'll need to talk with Dan at the station. What? Margaret said, surprised. Am I under arrest? Dan asked distantly. His mind was still playing back what he had seen. No, Bueller answered. Just have a few more questions for you. I'd appreciate it if you would ride along with me. I don't really have a choice, do I? I'm being polite, Mr. Sutter. You think he did it, don't you? Margaret spoke up in horror. That actually makes sense. It all makes sense. You probably killed her, didn't you? Marge, no, Dan answered her. How could you? You were always so jealous since she was born, always whining about how I paid more attention to her than I did to you. Jesus, what are you doing? Yeah, it all makes sense now. Do you remember when I found that pornography you were looking at online? Deviant. You sick son of a bitch. You probably did God knows what to her and then killed her. I want you out. I want you... Okay, that's enough. Bueller was getting upset. You're not helping anything, Mrs. Sutter. Now back off and let us leave without any incident. Dan began to sob even harder in disbelief that his wife of 15 years had turned on him. Bueller led him out to the back of his car, Margaret still screaming at him from inside the house. They had arrived at the Moon Valley County Security Building. The Fair Lake Police Station was downstairs, the sheriff's offices were on the main floor, and the jail and dispatch area were on the top floor. They drove into a security garage and they opened the back door of the car when the garage door was secure. They led Dan down a cream-colored hallway to an empty, sterile-looking conference room. Have a seat, Bueller said. Can I get you a coffee or anything? Dan shook his head, and Bueller decided to get him one anyways, and left him alone in the room, locking the door behind him. Who do you got? Detective Williams, another detective and for Fair Lakes, asked him in the hall. Dan Sutter, Bueller answered. His daughter turned up missing when they were allegedly flying a kite out at the soccer fields. You think he had something to do with it? The guy's claiming UFOs took his daughter, so what do you think? Any priors on the guy? None. The guy is squeaky clean. Not even a speeding or parking ticket. That's the only reason I haven't officially arrested him. You gonna do a psych eval on him? Maybe. I'll see what turns up after the lights flickered, then went off completely for 2 seconds and then came back on. Looks like the mayor didn't pay the light bill again, Williams joked, and then walked back down the hall to his own office. Bueller maneuvered 2 full cups of coffee down the hall the opposite way to the door, with only spilling a small amount on his hands. Luckily, he didn't burn himself. Mr. Sutter, Bueller stood there, staring into an empty room with his mouth open. Mr. Sutter? The room was completely empty. Shit! He pulled out his radio that was on his hip. Dispatch, I want all doors locked down. No one gets out. I need every available unit inside the station to be on the lookout for a white male, 38, black hair, with a slight beard. He was wearing a dark blue t-shirt and faded jeans. Hold him and let me know if you find him. Bueller out. An hour search turning up nothing. Bueller had the files from the security camera in the conference room sent to his laptop. Williams came over to his desk and watched the tape with him. The file shows Dan sitting at a table, his head slumped and his face in his hands. It looks as if he's crying. Then some sort of interference obscures the picture for a brief moment. What the fuck was that? Bueller mutters. What? William squints at the screen. That, right there. There are a few items on the table that seem to be shaking as if the table were vibrating. Dan is looking at the table dumbfounded. What the hell is going on? William squints, turn into a grimace. Just then, the image of Dan and the items that were on the table are actually floating in mid-air, just above the table. The screen distorts again, and he is gone, along with the items that were also on the table. "Shit," Bueller said. "Kevin?" William started. "What the fuck was that?" Kevin didn't answer. He just breathed heavily through his nose, staring at the paused screenshot. "Kevin," William shook his shoulder lightly. "Come on, you with me, man?" "We're going to have to erase this file," he said finally. "What? Erase it? Are you fucking kidding me? We can't erase it. It's evidence." "Evidence of what?" He looked at Williams coldly. "Well, this... I don't know, but it's... Jesus, man. We can say we tried to review the file, but it was glitched up, and when we tried to clean it up, we accidentally erased it." "Kevin, I don't know. That's the truth." Williams was quiet for a moment and then said, "It still doesn't explain away where he went to." "He escaped. It's that simple. We'll catch hell for incompetence, but it's a lot fucking easier to explain that than what we just saw in that video." 2 years later. It was Ann Silver's first flight as captain. Her Boeing 787 was on a return flight from Belize to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. She would admit later that yes, she did indeed have a drink before her flight. "It was just a quick nip off of Travel Flask," she said to the FAA board and her superiors at South Am Airwaves. I was just nervous about my first flight as captain." There was no turbulence that day, low clouds, but no storm systems for the flight. As far as maiden flights go, today was perfect. "We're just above Mexico City, Captain," her first officer says. "Thanks, Mel," she smiled back. They had leveled off at 35,000 feet and engaged the autopilot. "How does the weather look?" she asked her flight engineer. "There's a storm front, but it's out of our flight path to the northwest," he said. "Otherwise, it's clear as..." "Something wrong, Eddie?" I'm getting something odd on the radar scope. It's not clear, but it's not normal." Anne got up and looked at what he was seeing. She had him set the scope at 28 nautical miles range. There were several objects, 11.6 miles in the 7 o'clock position that was heading in the same direction they were in. "What the hell?" she muttered. Captain," Mel said from the co-pilot seat, "you might want to see this." She sat back into her chair and noticed a faint vibration thrum through the plane. It began to get more and more intense. "Look at the altitude meter," he said. It began spinning up and then down in some erratic pattern. "What the hell is going on?" she said again. Just then, the engines cut off. The vibration on the plane got so bad she thought her teeth would rattle out of her head. The thrum inside her head, and judging by the reaction of her crew, they heard it too. There was nothing but a brilliant light outside the cockpit windows. She didn't know if they were falling or moving forward or just standing still. Just before she thought the vibration would rattle her body apart, the engines kicked in again, the thrum was gone, and the sky was clear. They all looked dazed. Eddie felt something foreign in his mouth and then spit it out into his hand. It was a filling from his right side molar. Anne looked at the instrument panel and everything was reading normal. "Captain?" It was the intercom between the flight crew and the service crew. "Go ahead, Adam," Anne said. "I think you need to come back here if you can." She remembered in her training that under a hijack situation, there was a code they were to give if there was something like that happening on board. "Code 27?" she asked. "No, I'm not sure how to explain this." Anne knew there was an air marshal on board, so she felt a little at ease. She grabbed the .38 from the gun locker just in case. "Keep us level," she said to Mel, "and try to get hold of the nearest ATC. Find out if they've seen anything." "Be careful," Eddie said as she left the cockpit. As she walked out into the cabin, most of the first-class passengers were asleep. Those that weren't looked a bit scared and dazed. The first-class stewardess motioned for her to come back into business class. "What's going on? What just happened?" a passenger had asked. "We're trying to assess the situation, and when I have a clear answer, I'll let everyone know," she answered. "As for now, the plane is safe. We're still on course, and all equipment is running normal." She made her way into business class and heard a man yelling from the lavatory. There were several people, mostly men, gathered behind Adam, the head steward. "Adam," she said behind the crowd, "what's going on?" Crouched in the fetal position was a naked man. He was Caucasian, but his skin was a dark pink like he had suffered third-degree burns. Steam drifted off his wet black hair and his eyes were wide with fear. "Adam?" she asked her steward again. He just," Adam thought for a moment. He just appeared out of nowhere." "What?" "I know how it sounds, believe me, but before whatever happened outside the craft, there was no one inside either lavatory. Then after all that happened, I hear this screaming coming from inside this one, and I opened the door and found him lying here, just like this." The man was no longer screaming. He was only muttering to himself. "Does he have any family on board?" Anne asked. "As far as I can see, he's not even supposed to be on this flight." "What the hell are you saying?" "He's not supposed to be on this flight. South Am overbooked us, so we're full. Every person who has a ticket is present and accounted for except for him." Anne licked her lips. They were getting dry. She rubbed her forehead and tried to reason. "Maybe he stowed away?" Anne said. "The hatch to the storage area is locked from this side," Adam said, putting a blanket over the man. Anne knelt down next to him. "What's your name, sir?" The man shivered and winced at the sound of her voice. "You're safe now. I need your name so I can contact your family." He looked at her from the corner of his eyes. "Do you speak English?" My family?" he uttered. "Yes, sir. What's your name?" Lisa." "Your name is Lisa?" He frowned and then looked up at her. "My daughter, Lisa, where is she? I had her. I had her right here in my arms." "It was just you, sir." "It was just you, sir," Adam said. "It was just you I found in the lavatory." "Well, where am I?" "You're on Southam Flight 210 from Belize to Fort Lauderdale," Anne said. The man looked around as if the words sounded foreign to him. I'm on a plane?" Panic flashed in his eyes. "Get me down! Get me down! Please, God, get me down! I don't want to be up here. Not in the air with those things all around. Please, just get me down." "Calm down, sir." Anne had her hand on the grip of the revolver. "We're here to help you." "You don't understand. I cannot be up here. I can't do it." Someone came up the aisle with a prescription bottle. A woman, about 39 years old, good-looking, and perhaps famous. "Here," she said. "This'll knock him out." "No," he protested. "Get me out of the sky. Get me out of the sky." Some of the passengers who were gathered around them helped pin him down, and they got pills down his throat. Within a long 20 minutes, he was out. Despite the amount of witnesses to former Captain Ann Silver's testimony, she was grounded and would not captain a flight for South Am Airways again. Detective Kevin Bueller was eating at his favorite spot, Eddie's Cafe off First and Main. It had been a staple of downtown Fair Lakes since the Depression, owned by the same family since, and the menu hadn't changed like the rest of the health-conscious world. Before him sat a blazing yellow order of hash browns. 2 links of sausage, and a mash of scrambled eggs. He was finishing his toast when his cell phone went off. "Yeah," he said. "Bueller?" It was dispatch. "I have a phone call from the U.S. Marshal's office in Fort Lauderdale. I think you may want to take this." "Send it through." There was a double beep, and then, "Detective Bueller?" "Yes, can I help you?" "Sergeant Acosta with the U.S. Marshal's office." "Well, good morning, Sergeant. What do I owe this honor?" "Do you know a person named Daniel Levi Sutter, age 41, Caucasian, black hair, about 6'1"? Kevin's stomach got sour, but he managed to swallow the eggs in his mouth. "Detective Bueller?" "Yes, why?" "I have him sitting in a holding cell here in Fort Lauderdale. After we printed him, we got a hit in the database that your agency was looking for him." "Where did you pick him up?" "Well, that's a whole story in itself, but the gist of it is he was found on a plane coming from Belize to here. He caused quite an uproar on board. Not to mention he was naked during all of this. He was subdued by the passengers and an air marshal, and they tranquilized him. He was handed over to me, and now I'm calling you." Has he said anything?" "Yeah, the guy's a nutcase. Keeps claiming he was abducted by a UFO. That's why he panicked on the plane, said he didn't want to be in the air with those things, as he put it. According to the file, he's wanted for the murder of his daughter." "Abduction. We haven't found a body yet." "Well, he claimed that his daughter, Lisa, I think it was on the spacecraft with him, and all these things were going to let them go, but only let him go." Bueller only grunted a response. "Well, other than being completely batshit," Acosta said, "I don't really have any charges on him." "I'll put through paperwork to have the DOC expedite him here. That is, if you don't mind holding him until then." "No problem, Detective." "Thank you, Sergeant." "The guy's a bit of an escape artist, so perhaps I should have him confined to maximum security?" "I'm not sure that would help," he thought to himself. "If they want him, they'll just take him." "Whatever you think is best," he said instead. Dan Sutter sat with his eyes wide and bloodshot. He looked tan, but his skin was peeling like from a bad sunburn. Kevin remembered that the man had thick black curly hair which was thin now, patchy and straight with streaks of dead white in it. He was muttering almost inaudible whispers to himself which Kevin was straining to hear. "Did you call his wife?" one of the officers in the observation room asked. "Nope," Detective Bueller said. "I want to talk to him before anyone gets notified." "Okay, guy looks like shit." Kevin only looked at the officer and then asked him to turn off the camera as he walked out of the dark room into the conference room. "You look like you need a smoke," Bueller said as he walked into the room. Dan jumped but only shook his head. "Do you want me to notify your wife?" "No," he said quietly as Kevin sat down. "Well, why don't we start where you and I left off?" I don't remember." "How do you not remember a thing like that?" "I watched the tape, Mr. Sutter. I can't explain what I saw, but god damn it, it haunts my dreams." You saw what happened?" "You disappeared. Right before my eyes. Bang, zap, just like that." "So you believe me then?" "I'm not sure what I believe, but you need to tell me what happened to you after you left here." I've been trying. It's really foggy." "Well, why don't you start with what happened the day you disappeared?" Kevin said, fighting a Marlboro from a dying pack. Everywhere in Minnesota was smoke-free, but he didn't care at this point, because he really didn't know if he wanted to hear this man's story. He only knew he had to find this man's daughter. They took me. Who took you? Dan looked up at the fluorescent lights. Them. Aliens, Mr. Sutter? Yes. The same ones you claimed 2 years ago took your daughter, Lisa? Lisa. Yes. Oh my God, Lisa. They were letting us go. They were letting us go, but they kept her. Dan began to sob. Get a hold of yourself, Mr. Sutter. I can't help you unless you pull yourself together and start talking sense. Do you believe in God, Detective? I guess. I'm not much of a churchgoer, but I guess I believe in something up. There is no God, Detective. Kevin crushed out his cigarette and pulled the second to the last one out and lit it. You see what I've seen, Detective, and you realize this. Now, I was raised a strict Catholic. I taught Sunday school, went to men's Bible study. I went to confession more times than days I've been alive. All of that went to shit on that day. Kevin looked down at his arm, and the hairs were standing on end. He rubbed his arm and let Dan continue his story. I don't remember what happened after you left me in this room, Detective. I only remember feeling like my skeleton was going to vibrate out of my skin, and then everything went black. When I came to, I was in this cocoon type thing. It was like skin, but I don't know. It filled with some sort of jelly type thing that numbed my entire body. I was paralyzed. I couldn't see through the gel, and the sounds were muffled outside my cocoon. I was vaguely aware that they were pulling on my body. Dan motioned to the pack of cigarettes. There was only one left. Kevin didn't want to give it up, but he nodded. He pulled out the last smoke and lit it for him. Dan choked in deep coughs and then settled, holding the cigarette tight in his lips. After he had a few puffs from it, Kevin put it out for him. They opened up the cocoon where my head was. Oh my God. I thought I was going to go mad when I saw them. Oh, Jesus Christ. What did they look like? They sure as hell didn't look like Chewbacca or Yoda. They were gray. They had no mouths, which in a way relieved me, because if they didn't have mouths, they couldn't eat me. Eat you? I know. It sounds crazy, but that's what was going through my head. They had enormous heads that sat on impossibly long necks. Their eyes, oh God, their eyes, they were black. Black, like was two large almond-shaped pupils staring at you. I was begging for them just to kill me. I could feel myself go insane, like my normal self just let go and disappeared, so I started to laugh. I laughed so loud that I think I scared them a little bit. And that's when they brought in Lisa. Dan started to cry again. Snot and tears hung off his face. I'm going to get some tissue for you, Mr. Sutter, Kevin said, getting up. He looked at the ceiling and then said, I'll be back. Don't lose your train of thought. I got to take a swig of my blue raspberry lemonade. Oh, that's some good stuff. All right. Kevin had grabbed a box of Kleenex from his desk drawer. Next to it was a silver flask of Bushmills. He looked around. It was shift change, so there was no one around the office. He took 3 quick nips off the flask and then went to his partner's desk, slid open the bottom drawer and took a fresh pack of cigs from a carton, and then dropped a $5 bill inside. He stood outside the door wondering what he would find when he opened it. He took a deep, whiskey-scented breath and then walked inside. After he had another smoke and cleaned up his face, Dan reluctantly in his chair, as if he were hanging above a deep cliff. "So," Kevin said, "Lisa." "Yes." Dan's eyes began to water. She was inside a smaller cocoon. She was also covered in the jelly. Her eyes were wide open, but I don't think she could see me." Tears streamed impossibly down Dan's face, as if he were a statuary fountain. They let me hold her," he continued. "I got to hold her for about 2 minutes, and then they pried her from my grasp. I was just holding this cocoon, but I knew she was alive. I was sealed back up into my own cocoon, and I blacked out." "Did they communicate with you at all?" Kevin said, trying not to sound like a nut job. Have you ever read the Bible, Detective?" Dan asked. Sure, I guess." "No, I mean really read the Bible." "I thought you said you don't believe in God." "That has nothing to do with this. The Bible is a historical record. There have been archaeological findings to prove certain facts written in the Bible." "Okay, so what does all this have to do with your daughter, with what's going on?" "Because, Detective, they created us. They're God. All the angels, the fallen and the blessed, they're the ones our ancestors wrote of. The Norse and the Greek gods of Olympus, all of them, Native American gods, they're all these things." Kevin opened his mouth and then closed it again. "They've been manipulating us genetically for eons. Don't you get it? We're all just some lab experiment." The guy had lost his marbles. Despite what Kevin had seen, he knew that Dan Sutter's mind was a snake pit of insanity. When you went missing," Kevin said, "I told my superiors that you had escaped somehow. I risked my job." "Why?" "Because I believe you. Somewhat. I don't think you kidnapped your daughter." "But you don't believe that they took me?" "How did you end up on that plane?" Dan had lit another cigarette. He coughed for about 5 minutes straight and spat something out that was red and black into the trash can. They put me here. They put me there," Dan said, slowly between gasps. They teleported you there?" I guess it was the same technology that took me." Another coughing fit, and Kevin thought he would need to call a paramedic this time. "Why do you think they kept your daughter?" Dan wept again, with another furious bout of coughing. When he stopped, his lungs were wheezing. They didn't. I don't think. I don't think she survived the teleportation." Kevin poured him a glass of ice water, which he greedily gulped. "The teleportation, it weakens the flesh." Dan fell to the ground and curled into the fetal position, coughing again. "Jesus, man, are you okay?" Kevin asked. "Look at the stars, Detective. Look at the stars." With that bit of advice, Dan Sutter's body disintegrated into a puddle of clear liquid. Detective Kevin Sutter was asked to retire early. He had 3 years left until pension, but he also had several months of personal time saved up. So he retired early, and he was asked to keep his mouth shut about aliens and never to mention Dan Sutter again. He moved to a cabin on Leech Lake in northern Minnesota. He spends his time fishing and hunting alone. Every deer season, his nephew joins him at the cabin. He and his nephew are staring up at the clear night sky. It is flooded with stars. A meteor shower is supposed to appear in the northern sky. Uncle Kevy points out the different constellations to his nephew. As he names each one, he thinks about their origins, names of the Greek gods and goddesses, and he thinks about what Mr. Sutter told him in that cold interrogation room. Because, detective, they created us. They're God. What's that one, Uncle Kevin? His nephew asks. Which one? Kevin squints. That one. Next to Orion's belt? It was a strange pattern he had never seen before. He pulled out his binoculars to get a better look. And that's when the pattern broke apart and zigzagged across the night sky. What was that? His nephew gasped. That was nothing. Kevin's stomach turned sour, as it always does when he felt afraid. 24 years of being a cop had taught him how to smother the fear, but this is what happens when it's been hidden for so long. Nothing? But it broke apart, and then they flew, He was so scared now that he thought he would either puke or wet his pants. Come on, kiddo, let's go in. No way! I know what I saw! It's the meteor shower, that's all it is. Kevin couldn't help but feel the goose flesh pop out on his arms. Well, I'm staying out here. I don't want to miss this. You can't see this stuff in the city. Suit yourself. Kevin went to pull a beer out of the cooler that sat next to his bench on the porch. He wiped the sweaty bottle with a towel he designated as the official bottled can wiper. His back was to his nephew. Hey, kiddo, you want a pop? There was silence. And that, my friends, is the end of Lights in the Sky. I think it's kind of coincidental that the cop's name was Kevin. Don't you, Kev? Huh, Kevy? And I was freaking out Bobby, too, as well. So that's awesome. That's awesome. I did, my job here is done. So, I mean, as most of you guys know, the city of Fair Lakes is, in real life, is the city of Fairmont. So, yeah, those are the parallels. And, yes, the soccer field, Shannon. So, I'm glad you liked it, Shannon. So, and, yeah, Kev, I'm glad you liked it, too, buddy. So, after that incident, with my daughter, I had a really hard time looking at the sky anymore. I didn't want to see that again, and it sometimes lingers in the back of my head when I'm looking at watching the stars or whatever with Steph or out on a country road, and every once in a while we'll see something that will make us go, "What the fuck is that?" And then I'm like, oh no, it's this all over again. So yeah, it kind of the memory comes back and it freaks me out. So, but yeah, how this story kind of evolved into what it is, I don't know. That's just where my brain took the incident, and yeah, I was pretty happy with it. I'm glad you guys liked it too. Thank you guys very much for joining me tonight. We are planning on doing a live stream of the music in the park that we're going to do on Tuesday, next Tuesday. Yeah, that's right. You do live by the soccer fields, Shannon. I forgot about that. You and who's the other? Who was the canine cop that was there when I worked there? Bolches, Brian Bolches, yeah, he lives out there. So, yeah, so you both lived out by the soccer field. So there you go. You guys are probably being visited all the time. You don't even know it. And yeah, well, thank you, Bobby. I don't know if it's amazing. I just think my brain is really busy, and sometimes it wins the arguments that I have with it. So anyhow, so yeah, we'll be doing. Be sure to join me next week. I'll pull another story out of somewhere, one of my books. We'll read, and for the next horror hump day. Tunes for Tuesday next week is not the official Tunes for Tuesday, but it will be a live stream of myself, Bobby Paulson, uh, Mike Burns, and Amy Burns, and we'll be playing a free concert at the park here in town. Kevin, I know you said you might stop out, so it'd be kind of cool to see you and introduce you to Stephanie. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. Look forward to seeing you guys there. If not, you guys can watch us live on here. Um, I think Steph said she's going to be um, taping it or videoing it or doing the live feed for us, or we'll get something set up or whatever. Anyhow, we'll live feed it, and we'll either live feed it on here or live feed it on the Eagle Lake band page. Either way, there'll be a video of it posted on Beehive here. So, anyhow, guys, that was a long story. Almost went an hour with that one. So that's what's wrong with me. Yeah, yeah, I know. Between the brain and the right. Yeah, some bad decisions sometimes. Anyhow, always appreciate you guys. I'm getting all kinds of recognition badges from Facebook. Rising content creator, reaching a certain amount of subscribers and likes, reaching a large number of watches on my videos. I guess last night there was like 300 views on my video. I wasn't very proud of the whole Duran Duran thing, so I was like, wow. So, but yeah, I'm getting a lot of a lot of props, and all of that is because of you guys for liking and sharing my stuff. Um, it would be super awesome to have, 1,000 subscribers or 1,000 likes or whatever it takes to monetize what I do. But it seems with the online society, if you do stupid shit, then you get that's when you get the millions of likes and stuff like that. So, which is okay, but I'm not willing to do any of that stuff to get licks. I like to do something with purpose. I like sharing my stories with you guys. I like jamming with you guys, and I like having coffee with you guys. And so, whatever content you get from me, I'm not going to be doing any idiotic things other than, trying to learn how to play music from people I never thought that I would ever try to do. So, anyhow, that's what you get from me. The love is what I get from you guys, and it's very much appreciated. I only ask that share my video content, please. Um, or share with your friends, invite them to this page or invite them to my YouTube page. I think I'm up to like 31 subscribers on my YouTube page from my measly 3 that I had when I started out doing this. So anyhow, I appreciate every little bit. Every little bit is awesome. If you can like and share my stuff, would be super awesome. Amy Burns has herself a side business, and she makes t-shirts, and I think she said she should be able to do like bookmarks and stickers and stuff like that. So looking into doing some swag for you guys that are always here. And I'm also editing that my latest book, Thin Spots. And then as soon as that's all published, I'm ordering. I think it's 6 or 7 of them, and signing them and sending them out to you guys that were a part of the Apocalypse Hump Day Dealy Bopper I had going on. It was actually Shannon Bass that won. He won the little drawing thing that we did, but I just thought, um, as much as I appreciate Shannon uh, participating and joining in and stuff like that, a lot of you guys have always been here as well, and cheered me on and talked to me and stuff like that. So, and I just thought that little core group there, sign books, making it rain with books. Which, yeah, all right, I'm going to call it an evening, folks. See you guys on Sunday with Coffee with Friends. Um, I'm getting a lot more response with that again, so I think we're gaining momentum with the Coffee with Friends thing. I looked up the hashtag and I see that there are like a ton of other people that do Coffee with Friends deals differently than what we do, but it's kind of cool. There's a community of Coffee with Friends, so that's pretty awesome. Oh, other really cool news. Um, actually, it's not for me to release. That's actually Bobby's thing. So I'm gonna let him give the okay for that when it's all set in stone or whatever. But it's a really cool idea, and yeah, deals with the Guinness Book of World Records. So I'm kind of excited about it. But anyhow, all right, I'm gonna let you guys go. I got dogs out on a farm that are waiting for me to let them out, and so yeah, I can't do that. So thank you guys. Love you. You guys are here every night. I'm glad you liked the story. I hope you liked the story. Those of you that watched and are watching later, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Muchas gracias. Grazie. Yeah, all that. Danke. All right. All right. We'll see you guys later. Have a good evening. And Kevin, just hold Kate closer and you'll be all right. Okay? Pleasant dreams.